Don't blink or you could miss it. A phrase which could easily apply to any one of Jack Rudd's chess games. Hello everyone, I'm International Master Andrew Martin and welcome to the Round 5 Game of the Day from the 2017 British Chess Championships. We're going to focus on the unconventional and original game between Jack Rudd, International Master, and Grandmaster Peter Wells. Now Peter Wells is a type of guy who is going to be a very difficult opponent for Rudd to meet. Rudd, if you don't know him, is a player who moves incredibly quickly in the game. He's got an intimidating, aggressive style and he wins lots of brilliant games. But Wells, he's the type of really solid Grandmaster who also plays dynamically. And so he will be looking to win the game with Black against Rudd and aiming for a complex position as early as he can, which, as you'll see, was achieved. Well, Rudd tried to sidestep Wells's preparation by playing perhaps an unexpected variation of the English. Black shapes up to play the Nimzo Indian. White's not interested in playing d4 and instead plays Queen b3. He's hoping to force Black to take on c3 when he gains the bishop pair without any tears. So there's no way that Wells is going to do that. Instead he plays c5. Throughout this game, Black is aiming for a complex position where Rudd's speedy moving could count against him. And that's why he just plays bishop a5 here, as opposed to the straightforward bishop takes c3. That would be exactly what White wants. Bishop a5, of course, is much more unclear and puts the onus on White to find some sort of plan. Well, of course, g3 is the normal move, but now comes the unexpected move, g4. And that set the commentary room alight. We sat up and looked at this move and we thought, what is going on here? Because, of course, that is very unusual. It is known in quite a few openings that White can play this type of bayonet thrust. I mean, Shirov's played it a number of times against the Philidor. And there are other openings where you can get away with this thrust. But here, it looks rather extravagant. I mean, I don't think there's any way that Wells was going to take that pawn, rook g1. That's White's idea, of course, and then rook takes g7 makes it difficult for Black to get the king out the middle. But instead, Pete Wells finds a very sensible move, a dynamic move, continuing with development, and the onus really is on White to justify this pushing of the g-pawn early on. On with the show, White plays g5, and the knight comes into g4. So here we have a very original position. I think it's only been seen once before, as far as I can make out on the database, and perhaps that's not surprising. White played rook to g1. The earlier game between Maya Chibudanidze, the famous ex-women's world champion, and Yuri Razуваyev from Palma de Mallorca in 1989, saw White play knight e4 and Black played queen e7, rook g1. We reach a similar position to that which we reach in the game. But I don't feel under any pressure with Black here. I mean, I don't see what I've done wrong. And, well, Black could play f5, as Razуваyev did, or put his knight on e5, which will be similar to what Wells does in the game. What I like about this is that the two players are thinking for themselves early on. Really original chess and unusual decisions have to be made. I mean, this is not a London system or a Tory attack, where you're just churning out uncreative move after uncreative move. And this is really interesting stuff. So knight e5, White took the knight and played pawn up to d3. He could have headed for a wilder position after f4, knight c6, and now e3. It looks as though actually the White position is ready to fall apart at a moment's notice. But probably Black should just ignore everything and castle here, rather than get excited and try and break White up with a move like h6. h4, takes. Well, it looks as though this could be working out well for Black, but on the other hand, White's pawn chain is quite strong, and Black can continue trying to batter the White pawn chain with e5, but of course that allows the knight into d5. And we just have a very original position after he takes f4, and now something like queen to d3. I mean, I really couldn't say what is going on here after a move like b4. Obviously white is throwing caution to the winds, but on the other hand the black king on f8 is not ideally placed. The thing about Rudd is he moves so quickly. To play a variation like we've just seen requires pretty careful thought because it's so unconventional. Instead, moving fast, he sticks with the move d3, but after d5, which is very strong, I think black is already getting the preferable game. Well, again there came bishop d2, a natural move, but running this through the computers, it turns out that actually white can take on d5 and play bishop g2, however unlikely this may seem. I think this is a variation for machines because the human mind switches off at this point. You know, if you're looking at it a couple of moves back and says, well, black can play d4, I can't really do this. But it turns out that white can actually play this line because after queen b5 check, bishop d7, queen takes pawn, he's actually hitting the loose knight on e5. And then again, we get a very unconventional position here with black sacking the knight on d3, taking on c3, b4, bishop attacks queen, and now this queen check. Again, I wouldn't like to say what's going on. I imagine that white's okay here with b7 attacked. Rudd played bishop d2. Well, black could castle. Instead he plays the natural d4. White brings his knight to e4 and black chops on d2 and follows up by castling. I should say that at this point Wells was consuming a lot of time on the clock, whereas Rudd was moving very speedily indeed. One of the problems that white could face in this position is indicated in the diagram, with the kingside pawns on f2 and h2 possibly coming under attack from the black queen. And quite a good plan for black is just to play the queen to c7, threatening something like knight g6, and then just swoop down and try and attack those pawns. If black did play this way, we could understand that actually this bayonet thrust is not quite as great as it looks in the opening. It's original, yes, but is it any good? Well, we'll see something like this in the game, but for the time being, after knight e4, black gave a check on a5. Just gaining time really, because white doesn't really want to put his knight back on d2. So Rudd played king d1, and now the bishop came to d7. So despite the fact that Pete Wells is way behind on the clock here, he's having all the fun in this position. Black's immediately threatening bishop a4, winning the queen, and he's got ideas of b5. That's the move I really don't like if I'm sitting behind the white pieces here, b5, because that takes a can opener to the king. a4. I just feel that is creating yet more weaknesses for black to exploit. Now, could white have done anything else? Well, it's difficult. I mean, he can't move his king because the queen comes down to e1 at some point. If he plays queen c2, black could play his bishop out to a4 first, provoking b3 before playing bishop c6. Or he could play bishop c6 straight away and then just get on with rook b8, preparing b5. Again, a very nice position for black, who has all the ideas. White is just defending. But a4, not very nice. Wells plays bishop c6, bishop g2, and now this excellent move, rook b8. Giving himself all the options. And this is suddenly a position where, even if you're short of time, you can play it with black, because you've got lots of different plans. You can play for b5, you can play to attack their pawns on h2, with queen c7, something like that. White doesn't have any ideas. That is the problem. He's merely defending. So king to c2, and Wells sticks with straightforward moves, getting into some sort of time trouble with bishop takes e4. He's aiming for a position where he's got the advantage and white can't do anything. Black could also have played knight g6 or rook fc8. They were both good moves. But bishop takes e4 is good, and Wells sticks with his plan. He plays a6, h4, now queen to c7. So This is now an extremely nice position for black. You've got b5 coming up maybe, you've got knight g6 coming up, and then the queen invades on the dark squares. Rudd plays h5 to at least cut out one of black's plans. And now here we are, b5. Well, white's got to take that with the a pawn, and he took it with the c pawn. I mean, actually, if you look at the position, it's hard to see other moves. Black is just coming in, and white must take. Now comes c4, breaking in. White must take again, and now knight takes c4. Well, again, this is a hard position to play with white if you're bashing out the moves, and Rudd now makes what looks like the obvious move, but which is in fact not the best. I mean, bishop c6. White pieces are in a terrible tangle here on the b and c files. Amazingly, the computer suggests king d3 here as white's best move. I think actually that's a very hard move to play, but after it, it's possible that white would have lasted longer than he does in the game. I mean, if you give a check, we go back, putting the onus on black to find a winning idea. I mean, there are certainly moves here. You could play, for instance, knight d7, which looks good. You could play queen c5, which also looks good. I mean, in these lines, black is certainly better. But in the game, bishop c6, I think that's actually a losing move. And although Pete Wells' response is good, knight to e5, very good move, I think he's got better. If he plays knight d6, I think the white position more or less falls apart. I mean, one of the major problems for white here is he can't move his king. As soon as he does that, we chop on c6 and win material. So after knight d6, I think that would have been curtains. But knight e5 was played. Rook a6, rook fc8. This is still clearly good for black. White takes on c6. Black takes on c6. White recaptures with the rook. And now this nice centralising move, queen to e5. Well, you can see the problem for white. His position's terribly loose, isn't it? He's struggling to protect both his king and all his pawns. And the black queen's just getting ready to take on e2. King b1. Well, that is a demonstrably losing move. What can he try? Well, he can try king d1. Looks horrible. Of course, black can take on c6 and take on b2. But is it totally lost? I mean, let's see. We give a check, forcing his rook back, come back to a3. He tries to free up his back rank. We move forward. Again, we reach a position where white could probably have lasted longer than he does in the game. After king to b1, it's much easier. Wells takes on c6, and now d3. A line clearing move, threatening mate on b2, threatening e2. White's not coming back from this one. And after b3, queen c3, black moves in for the kill. King came to a2, pawn takes pawn, and I imagine it was simply Wells' time trouble that prompts Jack to play on for a little while. e1 queen, takes, c7, queen takes f2 check. This really is a mopping up procedure. Queen h2 check, and black will take on c7. Well, I like this game somehow. It's very original. I think we should congratulate both players on playing the type of chess we don't see every day. This is an unusual game, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for viewing.